Hello and welcome back. Today I thought we would dig into trying to make the Digitone sound a little more analog, or at least try to. Now the Digitone is an FM synth, and Elektron haven't yet graced us with any new synthesizer modes to make it sound any different, but hopefully one day they'll give us some virtual analog modeling, so we're not just stuck in an FM land. But I think we can get some of the way there today. So let's start with the news pattern and the default init. And there we have a sine wave. Job's done, right? Many synthesizers have a sine wave. So what else is there to do? I kid. And you know, sine waves, fairly analog, but not very exciting. They're just a fundamental frequency. And we want some more interesting tones. We want some more interesting waveforms. So the first thing that we're going to do is set our algorithm to algorithm 2. And if we look at this, we will notice that it's more closely resembling a dual oscillator configuration. We have the left-hand side, which mixes together operators A and C, and we have the right-hand side, which mixes together the two B operators. So if we were to introduce some A operator now, it would start modulating C, and that would be far too FM for what we're looking for today. So we can go into the second menu of Synthesizer 1, into the slightly scary looking ratio offset page. Now these settings, they usually give us finer control over FM, allowing us to sort of detune and generally make things more or less musical than the standard settings normally give us, which is things like thirds and fifths and octaves. And in here we'll dial back the carrier operator all the way to -1. And what this is going to do is completely silence the carrier, so that when we introduce the A operator, it will have nothing to modulate and will be the sole operator for this side of the synth voice. And while we're here, we will also dial back the B2 operator, which in this algorithm is acting the same way as C. So we'll eventually only have the A operator and the B1 operators making any sound. So if we try playing a note now, all we hear is silence. So if we go into the Synthesizer 2 page now, we can dial up the A operator, and I found somewhere around 71 works quite nicely for this. And if we play it now, we have a slightly square looking sine wave. So back in Synthesizer 1, we can adjust the harmonics, this time over to the right. In the previous video we adjusted it to the left, which modifies the harmonics only on the C operator. But if we turn this to the right, it starts modulating the harmonics of the A and B operators simultaneously. And for our first wave, we're going to dial it over to around 6.5. And this will give us a fairly nice looking saw wave. And if we play that, you'll see we're indeed in saw wave territory. Now let's move the mix over to the Y side, and we'll hear the B operator is now playing a very similar saw wave. It's not quite as crisp as the one on the A, coming through the A operator, but it still sounds quite nice. And we can mix between these two, and they sound pretty good as basic saw waves. Now we can take this further and make things sound a little bit more analog by going to the second page of the Synthesizer 2 menu, and we'll disable the phase reset for our oscillators. And what this will do is whenever we play a note now, the oscillators are free running and won't reset on every note. So now we have something approximating a dual oscillator synthesizer. Now we can adjust the mix into the center and mix both oscillators together. We can introduce a little bit of detuning. And we can even change the octave voicing like so. And then we can go in and filter things as normal. And then we have a saw wave oscillator on the Digitone. Now if we copy this track and paste it over track 2, we can start experimenting with a square wave. So if we keep adjusting the harmonics further to the right and get to about 17.3, and let's take out the detune and mix everything over. Maybe take out the filter. You can see we got a pretty clean looking square wave. Now our major downside, of course, is the lack of PWM, and the closest thing that we can really achieve in this configuration is if we dial up the mix a little bit, so we're getting some A and B operators, and introduce a little bit of detune. We'll notice that the two waves start beating against each other. And get us pretty close to sort of PWM territory. And the PWM modulation, the PWM rate will increase as we increase our detune between the two operators. We can't really set this to a particular level, but you know, if you want that sound in a sort of modulation in sort of LFO kind of way, then this works fairly well. And there you have it. We've made a sine wave, a saw wave, and a square wave, virtual analog waveforms in the Digitone. And from these building blocks, we can combine waveforms, put them all 4 tracks, and have ourselves a fairly low-cost emulation of a Vermona performer. And really, you can do a whole lot from here. So now that we're here, we could take a quick look at combining the waveforms. That's something we can't really do here that you can do on a more standard synthesizer, is combining waveforms in interesting ways. Each track is going to be either a square, a saw, or a sine, and we can't really have both at the same time. Now what we can do is leverage the multi-timbre features of the Digitone and combine the tracks to play at the same time, and have one on one waveform and the other on a different one. So we have track 2 here, which is our square wave, and we have track 1, which is our saw wave. So if we turn the mix all the way to the left on both voices, we have track 2 playing the square wave at the normal octave, and we have track 1 as a saw wave an octave down. Now if we go to the voicing menu, and we can adjust the layer to include track 1 and track 2. So now if we play a note, we have a combination saw and square. So now if we go to the mixer, we can dial in or out either of these waveforms. So let's take out the saw. We start with the square, and we dial in our saw wave, and our oscillator starts going a little crazy, and we can hear the tuned down saw wave. Now you have to keep in mind, of course, that these are actually 2 independent voices playing at the same time. So they each have their own envelope and filter settings, which makes for a very powerful and flexible approach, but we have to manually adjust each filter, each envelope, and each filter separately, which of course can lead to some interesting sounds and effects. So if we leave our saw wave in a pretty basic looking envelope, but if we go to our square wave and dial out the sustain, so we have more of a pluck sound. So now our saw is a bit more of a is definitely more of a pluck. But you'll notice we're not hearing the saw wave, only the square. You have to remember we have to go back to track 1, and now we hear both at the same time. And now we can add some effects to this. Let's set up our reverb and our delay. Add some width to that. Maybe send it into the reverb a little bit. So now on track 1, we can add some delay and reverb. And track 2, add a little extra here as well. And I can of course go into my DAW and add a little bit of extra reverb here, maybe some Valhalla shimmer. Set this up. Now I think that pluck's a little loud, so we can dial that back a bit. Maybe we can add some feedback, a little more width. Can add some chorus. And there we have it. We have a very nice, fairly analog sounding voice, which we can do these interesting effects with. And we can go into deeper detail about voice layering in a future video. But I thought this was a nice approach to dig into a little bit. And if you found this useful, please consider liking and subscribing on all of those things. And I'll see you next time. Thank you very much.